Ultra-processed foods by Brianna Lawson. The term ultra-processed is used to differentiate foods from whole foods or foods that have been minimally processed. Ultra-processed foods refer to different kinds of foods and drinks that have gone through extensive processing and typically contain an array of ingredients. These ingredients include things like preservatives, artificial flavoring, additives, and other substances. Most of these ultra-processed foods are made for the convenience of the consumer as they are ready to eat and have a long shelf life. In ultra-processed foods, there is an extensive list of ingredients that include additives and preservatives. These things that are added to foods are not things that someone cooking at home would use. It is important to note that these foods lack essential nutrients for humans when compared to whole foods. People can be drawn to these ultra-processed foods and not even realize that they are consuming because of the intriguing factor of having something that is ready to eat or takes minimal preparation and time cooking. With ultra-processed foods being such a popular thing in the United States, it has led to increased health problems among Americans. Some of these health problems include obesity, type 2 diabetes, and some cancers. The rise of obesity in ultra-processed foods is caused from the added sugars, sodium, and unhealthy fats. There is a lack of nutrients, even though these foods can be dense in energy. An example of an ultra-processed food are donuts. Donuts fall into the category of ultra-processed foods, which are nutrient-void and full of additives that can be detrimental to your health. The picture on the right shows a Mexican donut, which is also an example of a processed food. Arguments, viewpoints, and evidence supporting at least two aspects of ultra-processed foods. This is controversial because processed foods take up more than half of America's calorie consumption. It also has negative health outcomes for Americans, and it can cause weight gain and some cancers, etc. The consumption of ultra-processed foods between the years 2007 and 2012 were at an all-time high in the United States. This statistic was greater for non-Hispanic whites and non-Hispanic blacks. The consumption also increased for people that were less educated and held a lower socioeconomic status. Political, clinical, and cultural and social factors and forces shaping the viewpoints and guidelines around ultra-processed foods. Ethical considerations and action. There are challenges currently in the food system. Massive amounts of food are discarded, and this is due to the overproduction, mass consumption, and unsustainable food practices, all done by the people in America. Ultra-processed foods are foods that contain low nutritional benefit, added sugars, sodium, and unhealthy fats. High consumption of these foods have led to obesity and an increase in weight gain. Some metabolic adverse effects of these ultra-processed foods include insulin resistance leading to diabetes, dyslipidemia, which is abnormally elevated cholesterol levels, and hypertension that can lead to cardiovascular diseases. When people are eating these ultra-processed foods, it can disrupt the function of gut microbiota. This can further lead to the diabetes and other gastrointestinal disorders. It is important for people to have a balanced amount of bacteria in their stomach because it improves immune function, inflammation, and overall health. Then this all starts with the amount of ultra-processed foods that are consumed. And an increased amount of these ultra-processed foods can result in mental health issues, including depression along with anxiety. This is caused due to the lack of nutrients and the presence of preservatives in ultra-processed foods. It can also be a contributing factor to change of mood in an individual and cognitive impairment. And for me personally, I do agree with this because when I am eating ultra-processed foods, it does not lead me to have a good day, and I just feel better when I eat healthy and have whole foods in me. Nutrient composition. Ultra-processed foods are characterized by their low nutritional quality with often high in added sugars and unhealthy fats and sodium, while lacking essential nutrients like fiber, vitamins, and minerals. Obesity and weight gain. Regular consumption of ultra-processed foods has been linked to increased calorie intake and weight gain. The higher energy and density and palatability of these foods can lead to overconsumption and contribute to obesity. Metabolic health. Ultra-processed foods have been associated with adverse metabolic effects, including insulin resistance, dyslipidemia, and elevated blood pressure. These metabolic disturbances can increase the risk of developing type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular, and other chronic conditions. Gut health. Ultra-processed foods may disrupt the composition and function of gut microbiota, leading to diabetes and gastrointestinal disorders. This imbalance in gut bacteria can have implications for immune function, inflammation, and overall health. Mental health. Emerging evidence suggests a link between ultra-processed food consumption and mental health outcomes, including depression and anxiety. The lack of nutrients and presence of additives and preservatives in ultra-processed foods may contribute to mood disturbances and cognitive impairment. Ultra-processed foods affect the public by adding to the obesity epidemic. To address this issue, there needs to be public health strategies done and education required. Another problem is that there is a chronic disease burden. From eating ultra-processed foods, there is an increased risk for getting type 2 diabetes, various cardiovascular diseases, in some cases cancer. The focus for public health efforts should be to promote a healthier dietary pattern and educate the public on why ultra-processed foods should be consumed in lesser amounts. Governments and public health organizations are the ones who once held responsible for implementing policies to regulate the marketing for these ultra-processed foods. If there are no changes being made to the advertisement of these foods, then the consumer rates will continue to soar and the health issues will never be put to an end or lessened. Obesity epidemic. The widespread availability and consumption of UPFs have been identified as significant contributors to the global obesity epidemic. Addressing this issue requires comprehensive public health strategies, including education, policy interventions, and environmental changes. Chronic disease burden. Ultra-processed foods contribute to the burden of chronic diseases such as type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and certain cancers. Public health efforts should focus on promoting healthier dietary patterns and reducing the consumption of ultra-processed foods to mitigate these health risks. Health inequalities. Ultra-processed foods are often more affordable and accessible than fresh whole foods, leading to disparities in the diet quality and health outcomes. Interventions aimed at improving food environments and increasing access to healthy foods are essential for addressing health inequalities. Policy interventions. Governments and public health organizations play a crucial role in implementing policies to regulate the marketing, labeling, and formulation of ultra-processed foods. This may include implementing taxes on sugary drinks and junk food, restricting advertising targeted at children, and promoting food labeling transparency. Then finally, health promotion. Public health campaigns and educational initiatives are essential for raising awareness about the health risks associated with the ultra-processed foods and promoting healthier dietary choices. Empowering individuals with the knowledge and skills to make informed food choices is key to improving population health outcomes. Nutritional quality is low in the essential nutrients and high in unhealthy ingredients. Increased obesity will only continue to rise. And here I have some definitions. Nutritional quality. Critics of The ultra-processed foods argue that these foods are often low in essential nutrients and high in unhealthy ingredients such as added sugars, unhealthy fats, and sodium. They contend that frequent consumptions of ultra-processed foods can contribute to nutrient deficiencies and increase the risk of diet-related diseases. Then for obesity epidemic, there is substantial evidence linking the consumptions of ultra-processed foods to obesity and weight gain. These foods are typically energy-dense and palatable, leading to overconsumption and excessive calorie intake. Metabolic health. Ultra-processed foods have been associated with adverse metabolic effects, including insulin resistance and hypertension, which are risk factors for chronic diseases such as type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease. Then additives and preservatives. Ultra-processed foods often contain a variety of additives and preservatives, some of which may have negative health effects. Critics raise concerns about the potential long-term consequences and of consuming these additives regularly. Studies have shown that the population that is suffering the most from an ultra-processed food diet is socioeconomically disadvantaged. The American Journal of Clinical Nutrition published that low-income individuals were more likely to consume ultra-processed foods compared to those with higher incomes. This suggests that ultra-processed foods play a crucial role in addressing food insecurity and meeting dietary needs for certain populations. The controversy surrounding ultra-processed foods reflects the complex interplay between nutrition, health, socioeconomic factors, and consumer behavior. While there is consensus on the need to limit the consumption of ultra-processed foods to improve health outcomes, differing viewpoints highlight the considerations involved in addressing food insecurity, convenience, and dietary patterns. Efforts to promote healthier eating habits must take into account the diverse needs and circumstances of individuals and communities. Prevailing factors of contributing to the controversy of ultra-processed foods. Some socio-cultural factors are changing lifestyles, which is rapid urbanization and modernization have led a shift in dietary habits with an increased reliance on convenience and processed foods due to the time constraints and busy lifestyles. Cultural preferences. Cultural norms and traditions influence food choices, with some societies valuing traditional, minimally processed foods while others embrace convenience and novelty. Perception of convenience. Busy schedules and hectic lifestyles may prioritize convenience over nutritional quality, leading to the widespread of consumption of ultra-processed foods. Some economic factors are income disparities, which is socioeconomic status impacts dietary choices, with lower income individuals often turning to ultra-processed foods due to their affordability and accessibility. Globalization of food markets. The globalization of food systems has led to the widespread availability of ultra-processed foods, making them ubiquitous across various regions and socioeconomic groups. Some prevailing factors that contribute to the controversy of ultra-processed foods and socioculture factors. Within this factor, changing lifestyles can play a major role in changing up to eating foods that are more convenient and less time-consuming to make. Many people have busy lifestyles and don't always have the time to prepare a meal that can take hours to make. So the alternative to this issue is to just pick something up from the store that is quick and easy for them and possibly their family as well. Another point is that consumption can stem from individuals' cultural preferences. Norm and traditions have a big influence on the food choices that are made for people. Some people have traditions that follow nutritious foods, while others can follow and appreciate foods of easy convenience. A second big factor is economics. As I said, the income that is brought in by an individual plays a huge role when it comes to choosing what they will have to eat. If someone is living paycheck to paycheck, it is easy to believe that they may be buying foods that have a longer shelf life, that are cheaper, and these foods tend to be ultra-processed foods. It is affordable for them and easily accessible. Another thing is the globalization of food markets. Since there are so many food markets around, it makes it very easy for people to have these ultra-processed foods right at their fingertips. The controversy surrounding ultra-processed foods is shaped by a complex interplay of many things. Some specifics are sociocultural, economic, political, and health-related factors. Efforts to address this issue require comprehensive approaches that consider the diverse influences at play to aim to promote healthier dietary patterns and food environments for all individuals. Addressing the increasing consumption of ultra-processed foods requires a multifaceted approach involving individual actions, government interventions, collective efforts of local/global organizations. However, ethical considerations and constraints such as equity, industry influence, and cultural sensitivity must be carefully navigated to ensure that efforts to promote healthier eating are effective, equitable, and sustainable. This concludes my presentation of ultra-processed foods. Here's my works cited page, and thank you for your time.